Welcome in. It's a little bit of a later stream. My babe's away, so I will play. And I wonder if I can finish it today. It's gonna be a little bit shorter because I have D&D tonight. So probably only about an hour and a half. But let's see what we can get done. I was like in the middle of something. Yeah. I'm trying to lock down these kids of Susan. Okay, so Heather was in the musical, which, if I have a note. Okay. Asma has kept her sister off the field. She's a definition of extrovert, performing enough production of their life after high school. So Heather has asthma. It's maybe Ford. It might be Hughes. And the other one, Melissa. Find a picture of Susan. So that's 3 folk. And then I had a thought about Miami. Is it raining in the game? What am I hearing? Yes, it is raining. Okay. Are there any new photos for these folks? Yes, there's a new one of Chris Rafferty. There's a new one of Clark. No news about Clark Rafferty LaRue? Does it need the hyphen? There we go. Piketty is not afraid to expose details that other publications would avoid. Shortly after the announcement that Jane Doe Roottree was not a Roottree, Piketty exposed personal details about the story of Anonymom under the headline Anonymom is an Anonomicon. They said Anonymom worked as a manager at a department store in North Carolina, and her daughter's name was Courtney May. Wow, we're just going to dox her? They also said that the woman that vouched for her famous cover story, they didn't identify news time, perhaps to avoid being sued, is named Corrine S., that she had filed for bankruptcy. The article speculates that Anonymom and Corrine were in on it together and even speculates that they might have been lovers. Is there a Corrine in the fucking just list of women that guy ran through? Corrine Schwartz are hired as secretaries. Corrine Schwartz resides in Pennsylvania, though it appears she lives beyond Butler County limits. After she was named in a national tabloid, people have come to her place of work and accused her of being Anonymom. The article explains that it's impossible for her to be Anonymom because her only child is still in medical school. Unless her son's gestation period was approximately 10 years, it doesn't look like Corrine could have been involved in any of the potential affairs on your tree. Okay. What's that deaf school called? Randorf Dove. Yeah. Okay. Who's this one? From New Orleans. What was that about secretaries? Had a daughter. Worked as one of Guy's secretaries. Christine Farrow. Let's look up Antoninus. Elizabeth had a daughter, Christine. Sam never, it doesn't matter. Christine was Guy's secretary. A caterer from a local restaurant met her daughter. Okay. Antonelli's is an Italian restaurant that has been in the Butler County Times twice. Most recent time is when it closed in 92. The owner, Rochelle Zimmer, sold the land the building was on, and at the time of the article, she was unsure if the restaurant would move to a new location or if she would retire. Many years before that, there's a puff piece from Valentine's Day 78 that asked recently married residents of Butler County how they met. Christine Garland responded. She and her husband Steve, who was a chef at Antonelli's, met years ago when she delivered produce from her mother's farm. Yeah, sure. Steve used to work extra hours just to be there during her deliveries. Although they grew apart when the restaurant switched suppliers, they reconnected by chance and eloped at the end of last year. Now she has a bun in the oven and they're both working as much as they can. She's a secretary but went back to delivering produce on the weekends, trying to save up money to move to Boston and open their own restaurant. Okay. Steve Garland. Fair. No. What is it? Christine Farrow. Whoops. Let's wager. There's this photo. She leaves at 78. Christine is hired in 76. And Guy replaces in 78. So this is probably Christine, the blonde. We're gonna try and get into it. Okay. Rochelle and her husband, Mark Zimmer, have a few mentions in the Butler County Times. Both were local business owners. Rochelle owned Antonelli's, an Italian restaurant, and Mark owned a local bookstore called Bookmarks, both climbed in 92. Mark was also mentioned once when he was sued by Steve Garland. All right. Bookmarks appeared in the Butler County Times many times. All of them were in the form of advertisements and listings of events. None of it seems relevant. Lauren Roottrees did a book signing in the 70s. Look up Steve. Steve Garland is mentioned in a couple of articles. The first was an article about how he met his wife Christine when he worked at Antonelli's. The second is from months later in September 78, listing for his weekend cooking classes, Gourmet for the Groovy. The blurb mentions he's been giving lessons from his home kitchen for the last month so that he can keep an eye on his son. The third was from 1991. I'll say. They had it in the last one, like unknown male. The third was from 91 and is titled Local Author Sued by Former Butler County Resident. It seems that a local author by name of Mark Zimmer sued by Garland after Garland saw Zimmer promoting his book Kitchen Tales on television. His recipe book was partially plagiarized from the recipes that Steve Garland would give his students during his cooking lessons before he moved. Kitchen Tales by Mark Zimmer. The article mentions that although recipes are hard to copyright, Garland accompanied each recipe with a short fiction about how he learned it. These usually doubled as a way to remember certain ingredients. Garland's bean salad, for example, involved making a trade with a gnome for some magic beans. Apparently, these stories were found word for word in Zimmer's cookbook, in addition to additional stories that followed the same format. What? Oops. A recipe book that contains stories. Where is Steve? There we go. The introduction of this book is a series of acknowledgments from Steve. The first is, Christine, thank you for everything. Your support means the world for me. You're the apple of my pie. The second is to James and Robert. You're becoming amazing men and incredible chefs. I guess I'm a good teacher. The final is to Mark Zimmer. You proved my storytelling approach to recipes could be popular. Without you, this book wouldn't exist. There's also a foreword by Mark Zimmer. I first met Steve in 1978. When he taught a cooking class. The next time I saw him was over a decade later when he was suing me for stealing his recipes. Yes, really. So you might wonder what I'm doing in this introduction. Well, it turns out that Steve and I had a lot more in common than we thought. Instead of settling in court, we settled it at McCarran's brew house over a game of darts. They said they'd give us the first drink of the night free for an entire year for mentioning them. By the end of the game, he and I agreed we'd both rather make a ton of money together than spend a ton of money on lawyers. It's pretty rare to meet your best friend so late in life. When I decided to retire, I moved to Boston so we could hang out. So if you're browsing this book in a bookstore, please buy our book. We need more money for when the free beer runs out at the bookstore. Could probably use the sale. Okay. So we got James and Robert. Okay. McCarran's Brewhouse is a pub in Boston, and they have a website. Apparently, the bar has been around a long time. On the site, there's a list of famous people who have had a drink there, including the former president of the United States, not of the Roottrees Company, Kennedy. There's also a few listings of television shows and books that have mentioned McCarran's, as well as how they came up. One of them is Garnishing the Truth, which the site has this to say about. Local and regular Stevie G wrote a book about food. We prefer cocktails, but he gave us a shout out, and we ain't gonna say no to free press. So go grab a bite at his kids' joint, Fried Eye, then spring by to meet him for a drink. Fried Eye is a fairly popular restaurant in Boston. They don't have a website, but many locals seem to mention them in various places. One more in-depth review explains that it's not a full restaurant, just a front door and a very small interior with a window. Unusually, the restaurant only serves vegetables, but a lot of reviews say that in spite of it, it's delicious. You also find a short story about it listed on a website called My Boston Homepage. Whoever runs the page seems to just link to random sites related to Boston, tell personal anecdotes related to Boston, and give their relatively short opinions on things in Boston. It's very unorganized. It has this to say about Fried Eye. Wicked overrated. I saw it in Chef's Signature, so I went and there was a huge line and they didn't have a single meat dish. What's even the point? I'm gonna get another publication. Magazine related to food. Well, let's look up Steve Garland. Let's look up James Garland. Chef's Signature covered Fried Eye less than a year ago, right around the time you were doing your initial investigation. Each article in Chef's Signature tends to focus on a restaurant, and like the magazine's name implies, each restaurant lists one main dish that the head chef is known for. Fried Eye Signature is the samosa cone. The cover and main article has been added to your evidence. If I do Robert. No. If I do Fried Eye. No. Fine. Make me work for it. Boop, boop. Can a vegetarian diet be trendy? Sitting down with the Garlands, the new boys in Boston. Chef's Signature, a nationally published magazine targeted toward fans of unusual restaurants, featured James and Robert Garland on the cover of their November 1998 issue. According to the article, the two brothers own a small walk-up window in Boston called Fried Eye, a play on the tie-dye shirts that the servers wear. It exclusively serves vegetarian dishes. Most of the offerings are heavily inspired by the powerful spices found in Thai and Indian food. Their signature dish is the samosa cone, which from a distance somewhat resembles a traditional ice cream, complete with a waffle pattern. Instead, it contains fried potatoes, pureed peas, carrots, and a special ginger-based sauce. Robert, who is 3 years younger than James, so James and then Robert. Jokes that although the age difference has left him delegated to wear the Sioux chef jacket his whole life. He doesn't mind. As a result, James answers most of the interviewer's questions. James credits his love of food and his culinary skills to their upbringing. Most kids hate vegetables growing up, but they don't have parents like we did. My father was a chef, and my mother grew up on a farm that supplied his restaurant. That's how they met. I don't have any memories from the farm or anything like that since we moved here before I could even talk, but they told me stories. My dad's a great storyteller. He even wrote a book that partially helped fund Friday. When we moved, they were looking to open their own restaurant together. Unfortunately, they never got it off the ground. His line cook gig ended up being less temporary than he hoped, and she had to go back to work as a secretary even after Robert was born. Before they were old enough to go to school, we spent our days with my aunt. In the diner where he worked, my dad had no room for experimenting, so he'd exercise his skills at home on his days off. We'd always go shopping and cook as a family on those days, even though we were hyper kids running around and causing a ruckus. Those were some of our family's favorite memories since we were all together. Mom always had an eye for the best vegetables for him to work with, and she did her best to pass that on to us. According to the article, their parents, who are now retired, visit Friday often. They even have a signature dessert, the Sistine apple. Apple pie has always been my mom's favorite. My dad always has this super stupid line he used to make her laugh involving apple pie. Most people realize it's a Sistine Chapel pun and assume that all there is to it, but it's actually secretly named after them, sort of. Sistine. Okay. So, red, blue. Chef. Booyakasha. Him's also a chef, and she's retired. Oh. Retired's not a... Okay. So we got 1, 2. And about an hour left for us. Bess Williams. The Miami Mercury had an article about the Bess Williams section in the Bocadoro Library when it was being built in 1928. Mentions that Bess's young son, now an orphan, was in attendance during the dedication. It also had a later mention from 49, the last year the paper existed, about a bidding war for a planned expansion of the library in 1950. The bidding was won by Wildcat Construction and included a new statue, fountain, and a second room that would double its shelf count. Okay. Okay, young son. Wildcat Construction is listed on some historical records as having worked on many buildings in Miami, Florida. It ceased operations in the 60s. Wildcat Construction was mentioned once in an article you've already seen. It also mentioned earlier in 47 under the headline, Constructing a Better World, Frank Wildcat Williams left Florida in 41, a construction worker, and returned a hero. He won the Navy Cross for his bravery and sacrifice, having carried a fellow soldier to safety under heavy Nazi fire. Now he and his wife Ophelia are carrying his fellow soldiers through tough times at home. Wildcat Construction is Frank's company, focused on creating opportunities for soldiers finding difficulty getting back to normal. Ophelia has handled outreach to the wives of local veterans who are often able to provide insight into their husbands' needs and conditions. She has, through such outreach, found 13 veterans of war to serve as Frank's employees. The community support has been unendingly and overwhelmingly positive. It has gotten to the point where if Frank bids on a project, other local companies have decided to step back and let his soldiers handle it. This has become a bit of a sore spot for local politicians and business owners, as the bids are often not as low as they expected. The problem for them is that essentially Frank has a selective monopoly, but any attempt to circumvent it has caused an uproar and accusations of being un-American. It's uncertain what will become of Wildcat Construction, but at least for now, we're rooting for them. All right, Frank. Frank Williams. S. Williams. There's an author. Construction. Nope. Ophelia. Something. Okay, so they're gonna have a child. Frank Wildcat Williams is listed on a few different military history websites. He was awarded a Navy Cross Medal in World War II, and the story goes that even after being struck in the arm with a bullet, he managed to carry a fellow soldier through enemy territory on his shoulders for over 2 miles. He died in '96, aged 74, in a retirement community in Sweetwater, Florida. An obituary on the website of a local news channel that was written by his surviving family also sheds light on some of his personal life. He grew up an orphan because his family died in a hurricane when he was very young. He could barely remember his mother and had no memory of his father. After the war, he ran a construction company that mainly hired World War II veterans and did a lot of jobs in and around the greater Miami area. He was a born joker and a shining light to those veterans who needed it most. An anecdote mentions that he used to insist he married his wife Ophelia as a matter of courtesy and convenience. She wouldn't have to change her last name. Okay. A photo is attached of Frank in his youth, juggling hammers in front of one of his construction sites, as he was often known to do. According to the article, he is survived by Ophelia, as well as his daughters, Barb and Sharon Williams. Okay. So Ophelia Williams. Oh. Let's see. Boop. Okay. Boop. Sick. We're doing it. Halfway. Sweet. All right. Yeah, give me more evidence. Oh, you're here together.
Hey there, it's us. So I just have to say, the work you're doing here is fantastic.
So fantastic, in fact.
I need to slow
There
down.
goes Clark. Always the bad cop. Go ahead.
Well, our law firm, Ruby Legal Enterprises, is having trouble keeping up. They're actually begging us to stop submitting new Roottrees. They said it's getting difficult to verify your progress.
Well,
Well,
get
consider
better.
that a good thing. I told Clark you'd get results.
She says that like I didn't believe her. Regardless, the bad news is it's going to take 5 potential tree additions before anyone locks in from now on.
Okay.
Good luck.
And keep up the good work.
Okay. Well, yeah, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 left. So 2 more. 2 more lock-ins. Okay. Okay. Ophelia. Nope. Where is it? Sharon? Sharon with 1 R. Okay. Okay. Nothing. Not even a newspaper. Okay. Oh, the Raffertune site that once had a photo of Clark on it no longer exists. Instead, it redirects to a site for a telephone number called 1010-250, which frustratingly keeps popping up advertisements in new windows every few seconds. Sure is annoying. A phone number you can dial before making long distance to receive a discount from the telephone company. For the past few months, you've been inundated with ads for it and other services like it. This includes TV spots starring celebrities, radio commercials with parodies of popular songs, and banner ads for it on many different websites. Doesn't seem to be relevant to your search. The Raffertune's domain was likely purchased by a third party when the license expired. Right. I mean, she kind of looks like those kids, right? Yeah, I'd say she could look like those children. Oh, sweet. Crocodile Clementine is listed on a website called the Infamy List. It's a massive list of criminals who are known for odd crimes. Although Mark's nickname would imply he hails from Florida, a lot of others on the list come from there, or Australia, Mark is listed as being from Los Angeles. He has a pretty big entry. He seems like a real piece of work. There's a very small note about him being the basket baby of 1950, but most everything else comes from his adulthood. He lost his job in 1975 as a pilot for a regional airline after he tried to board the wrong airline's plane. He was drunk. He was charged with trespassing and assault. In 1982, he was arrested for transporting smuggled animals over the Canadian and Mexican borders for an illegal reptile supplier in Los Angeles. He was apparently quite successful for the first 4 years, but was caught when he had to make an emergency landing in Portland after he was bitten on the foot by a crocodile, hence the nickname. Apparently, the Portland Telegraph, yes please, run-of-the-mill newspaper, they have a website. Okay. Portland Telegraph is credited as having given him his nickname. His mugshot from the incident has been added to your photos. In 1993, he was released on parole, but his freedom didn't last long. He was arrested in 1994 in San Diego for violating it in an attempt to visit his daughter's graduation. He famously punched the principal, a man named Billy Sims. This incident received national press. Okay. Newstime did a small piece about a fight between Sims and Crocodile, but tried to approach her from a different perspective. Their goal was to paint a picture of the two men involved from others who knew them best. Not only did they manage to interview Sims' wife, Carla, as well as multiple staff members at his school, they hunted down Colleen Webb, Mark's ex-wife. Colleen Webb. According to the section with Colleen, she and he met when he worked for an airline. She worked at the newsstand. He was a drinker and would often have wild mood swings. When he was charged with assault of a fellow pilot in 1975 and lost his job, they divorced. At the time, she was pregnant with their second daughter, and she felt she needed to get out before things got worse. She left him and moved to San Diego to live with her sister and told her oldest that her dad had to fly in planes for the Army. She raised them both by herself, and although she never went through the trouble of changing their names legally, they used the web names so that nobody would connect them to her ex-husband. Okay. So they are Clems. Okay. Search. Portland Telegraph was the one that provided the nickname Crocodile Clementine and has some details about Crocodile Clementine's first major arrest. He was flying weekly between Los Angeles, Juarez, and Vancouver in a small plane. His flights were very low, literally under the radar. He was only caught because he was bit by a crocodile on the leg and had to call Mayday because he was losing blood. He tried to tell them he was a crop duster who somehow cut his leg on a loose piece of metal in the cockpit, but his story seemed very odd, and controllers quickly alerted the police without informing him. When he landed, they were waiting, and he was promptly arrested. Is his occupation criminal? No. Pilot? Got one. We got two. Okay. Oops. Basket Baby of 1950. A few sites about true stories focused on and around religion mention that in 1950, a gospel singer named Mary once found herself dealing with a real-life baby Moses situation. Apparently, she was a rather prominent supporter of the concept of adoption, and someone decided to test how much. They left a baby on her doorstep in a basket. According to the site, she adopted him without question and raised him as her own. Although it wasn't national news in many circles, he became known as the Basket Baby, and even went on to tour with her as he grew up. None of the websites state who the woman or baby were, likely to prevent people from looking into either of the people too closely. From context, you know it's Mary Beth Clementine, who would later be shunned due to her personal life, and her son Mark, who would be known as Crocodile Clementine. Shunned due to her personal life? Just because she divorced? Oh, yeah. Not divorce. God forbid. Oops. Okay. Basket Baby. Billy Sims. Billy Sims is the principal of Sandstone Canyon High School, who had his 15 minutes of fame in 1994 when he was punched by Crocodile Clementine at a graduation ceremony. Pretty much every news organization, from Trustworthy to Tabloid, seemed to have their own take on the altercation. It wasn't the punch that captured the nation's attention, however. Instead, it was Billy Sims' matter-of-fact response to the threat and his comments afterwards, as heard in a now famous audio clip from someone who was recording the ceremony. Billy saw Mark hop onto the graduation stage and said, "Sir, you'll want to sit down or we'll have a problem." At that point, Crocodile reportedly sucker punched him in the face. Billy, apparently only slightly dazed, said, "All right, sir, I guess we'll have a problem." Clementine tried to throw him another punch, but Sims anticipated it and performed a maneuver that spectators described as a wrestling move mixed with a backward somersault, which immediately brought both men to the floor, with Sims straddling Clementine, keeping him neutralized. As security arrived, the recording captured someone asking, "How did you do that?" And Sims' response was famously, "Trust me, I'm as surprised as anyone." Wow. Okay. Sandstone Canyon High School. in San Diego. Okay, did that. Pikachu magazine is kind of sleazy, so they're not afraid to publish a few details that more reputable news publications normally wouldn't. You look up the Billy Sims incident, and it seems they did report on it. You gain a few new bits of information, though it might not be useful. Billy Sims was once arrested for throwing a Molotov cocktail at a company that was found to be testing their products on animals. According to police paperwork, Crocodile Clementine's bail was paid for Tostarito Jacobson. It was fairly expensive. Piketty interviewed other students that were at the event to find out if anyone knew anything. And the word going around was that Mark Clementine showed up because his daughter Mary was graduating that night. Okay. Save that later. Tostarito Jacobson. Fuegos Fiesta, a regional Mexican fast food chain, held a competition in 1993 that offered free meals for life to anyone that legally changed their name to Tostarito. The Tostarito was a burrito with a cylindrical tostada shell inside the flour tortilla. According to a few different sources, Tostarito Jacobson used to be named Lucinda. Fuegos Fiesta. Okay. Lucinda. Okay. In the wake of Six Pieces' release, Lauren Roottrees, author of A Life Between Wars, was tracked down by a reporter. Yeah, we know that. Oh. $10 says Piketty has that photo. Oh. These. Nothing appears to be new. Okay. Find an article about the dedication ceremony for the local Portland landmark, the Fountain of Youths. Apparently, at the unveiling of the fountain, the mayor of Portland made a speech, and there were performances by multiple local entertainers, as well as a ribbon cutting from the people most instrumental in bringing the fountain to fruition. The article calls out that all of the performers and speakers, with the exception of the mayor, were foster care alumni. Most of them grew up together as close friends. This includes poets, musicians, and dancers. Davy was listed as one of the musicians. The Fountain of Youths. Fountain of Youths, also known as Foster Fountain, is a fountain found in a small park in Portland. All proceeds from change thrown into the fountain are donated to the foster care system. A website for Portland's Parks and Recreations mentions under a trivia section that the Fountain of Youth was originally conceived by Ruby Spratt, an alumni of the foster care system. As more businesses signed on as sponsors, it grew in scope even beyond Spratt's original hopes. The fountain is unique because it has special targets that visitors can aim their coins towards. If a coin lands on one of these targets, each of the sponsor businesses matches it. This isn't a huge amount of money from each business, but more than 100 businesses have agreed to participate, so each penny becomes $1. It's like nasty. Ruby Spratt was featured on the Portland Telegraph when she was in high school in an article called Local Team Making Change for Foster Care System. According to the article, Ruby Spratt grew up in the foster care system, was apparently the valedictorian of her school, and was as a Girl Scout who, at the time of the article, was earning her Gold Award. This required a project to help the community, and Ruby chose to raise money to build a fountain she called Foster Fountain. Fountain was a few small pedestals that stuck up high above the water. People are expected to toss coins into the fountain for good luck and will be encouraged to aim for the top of the pedestals. All of the coins scraped from the bottom are slated to be donated to Portland's foster care system. A coalition of local businesses that sponsored the fountain have committed to matching any of the donations that successfully land on the targets. What's a Gold Award? Okay. Nice. Multnomah County Corrections. Lucinda Jacobson. Okay. Let's see what a hint does. Okay. I guess I'll just you know shit again. What was his dumb email? Was Thomas Wood. The older version. Oh. Chris Rafferty's Prodigy site seems to have been discovered by the masses. Gone are the art pictures of his cousins. Instead, it's a list of questions that people keep emailing him. The most relevant ones are the following. Are you the son of Clark Rafferty? Yes, but I didn't grow up with him. I remember him from when I was a little kid, but I moved away with my mom when I was very young. We left Pennsylvania and moved back home to Virginia. We lived there with Pete, my stepdad. My dad and I spoke a few times when I found his phone number on a check he sent us in the mail when I was 15. He was happy to hear from me, and now he calls me once a month and came to visit me at college. He tells me about things I don't remember and people like Guy Hudson and Ernie Madsen. My dad and I get along, but obviously we aren't very close. Did you ever meet the Roottrees? I used to know the Roottrees, but never the sisters. I was in the office sometimes when I was a kid, and I definitely met Guy Hudson before he died, but I don't remember. My memory is weird. It's hard to know what I actually remember and what I only think I do because I have pictures. For example, I have a photo from when I was 5 and in the office with my dad, and Guy was there. I made myself sick by eating chocolate, and some woman who I don't know cleaned my face. I don't know if my memories of that come from the picture or not. The photo is added. How did you have proof of Ernie Madsen's heart condition? I knew Ernie had a heart problem because my dad told me on one of our phone calls. I asked him about the poison because I saw it on the Roottree Curse website. He emailed some old stuff, including the proof. But even with the proof, the website didn't take it down. You spell fiance wrong. I'm not good at spelling or writing. I'm good at painting and other art. I'm going to school to learn how to edit movies. I want to make cartoons someday. Lulu is much better at spelling. Nice. Okay. Okay. Oh, this is Susie. That's Susie. She's got the tattoo. This is Clark. Nope, Chris. This is Clark. And this is Guy. We have this one. Okay. So we're doing pretty good. Because what? We've got all these, all of these, all of that. Those are done. All of those. And then this will be done. We can fill that in as soon as we lock her in. I should try and get friggin' Barb done. We have a lot more photos though. No, what was it? The recap? Hmm. What's his name? What's his wife's name? Patricia Jones. Okay. Patricia, what is it? Guy Hudson? I didn't see that. Okay. What was that deal with the nom? Bernie Schwartz comes up in a few articles from local news stations in Pennsylvania. Some of the people attempting to track down a mom were harassing her. She recently had to take a leave of absence because people showed up at the car dealership where she works. She is begging people to stop the accusations so she can get back to a normal life. In every article you find, the journalists involved have independently verified she's not a mom. Okay. But what was the... Might have been lava. Doris Mays. Stop. Doris Mays leaves at 79. A year after Whoop. Corny maze. Oh. Report. Spam. Next. Subplot. What's the timestamp on that chat, though? This is what? Band. Okay. I guess I can look at the art piece. After the release of 6 Pieces, Carolyn Morden did a television interview. Someone has uploaded a partial transcript of that interview on the television section of a messaging community. Transcript is only her answers and is missing the questions. This creates a somewhat confusing reading experience, but does give you a bit more history about Caroline and some of her family members. Okay. Evidence. 45 minutes. Cable news interview, a transcript of only her answers has been posted. Thanks for having me. I never really fit into the family, so it didn't surprise me. She could have put me in if she wanted to talk about the time during my activism days when I almost got arrested for stealing the spark plugs out of all her tractors, but I don't really think it fit her narrative. Yes and no. They never tried to kick me out or send me to live on a farm, if that's what you mean. But I was already pretty unpopular, and once everyone learned why I divorced my husband, few people paid me any attention. She's my wife. Not legally, but we've been together for half our lives. Call it what it is. I was 20 and had just had my daughter. I hate to look back on that time because I was a terrible mother the first few years. I left my daughter with my ex-husband and fellow guy on a private jet to Europe. He lost a tooth and a client. I found love and a better understanding of who I was. Still, in our family's eyes, his trip was somehow more acceptable. Explain that. Oh, she's French. Oh. I bet. I gotta find the Frenchman. His name. No, I couldn't stand him. Our family wrote off his behavior like he was some huge fan of romance or women, but he didn't like the entire woman. It was doubly awkward for me because he was more supportive than most. Slowly figured out it was because he assumed I would be as shallow as he was. He was a workaholic. He seemed nice enough and did a good job. I didn't know him well. That was one of Sam's problems with our family. None of us did except Carl. Honestly, I get why she's pissed. I'd rather not speak ill of the dead, not unless you want more stories about Guy. With Carl, though, all I can say is we used to be friends before they sent him to private school. He came back a lot judgier. It made sense when they made him president. He was a lot like my father after they disciplined the fun out of him. After I started protesting the farms, he stopped returning my calls. Oh well, he's harder to label. When I was a teenager, he was basically drunk or high or both all the time. He actually used to sell me pot. His problems with women were different than guys, but he never really judged me. I guess he knew it would be pretty hypocritical to judge anyone for anything. Back then, he was destructively unreliable in every way, but nowadays he's just kind of boring and old. I prefer that to how he used to be, and to Guy and Carl, but it's still a cautionary tale. I hope I'm never that boring and old. Nice. The French partner. Do I have notes on it? Guy. Australia, China. France. Where's she? France. Robert. Can I change it? Oh no. Is that her sculpture? Whatever. Obviously not relevant. Possible her diary has new information for you now that you have a different focus. Oh. When revisiting her book, there's a single passage that focuses on potential affairs. What? Rafferty? Okay. An entry entitled Cruelty from Lauren Roottrees' diary, written in 1963. It focuses on the relationship between her mother and father. While it offered only redundant information during your previous investigation, it mentions the subject of affairs and may be more useful this time around. I am no stranger to true love. Jacob and I married at an age that most deem unfit for marriage. But he was also enlisting at an age that most deem unfit for war. We had no choice. I knew in my heart that our marriage was one for the ages. He and I would still be together today if not for Okinawa. And that was nearly 20 years ago, but there is an emptiness in my soul. I do not understand my contemporaries. So many girls I went to school with have taken multiple lovers. So many of my girlfriends' husbands have been unfaithful. If I am able to remain true to the ghost of a man with no chance of physical reciprocation, no potential for long conversation, how could it be so hard to love someone you can reach out and touch, someone you can joke with? I have not had to deal with such madness at home. My parents are a perfect match in the worst way. My mother's cruelty is a perfect fit for my father's general spite. In turn, pop status enables her incessant need to gloat and feel superior. I have grown up with their cruelty and disdain for others in my entire life. Even my family remains unspared. They make fun of my grandpop and his family, sayings, blood is thicker than syrup, but nothing's thicker than Elias. They mimic Grandma Gwyneth's lisps and see her kindness as a weakness. Eliath, please remember Tham. Not even our family's maladies and religion go unmocked. Remember, God put only one eye in miracle. I can say without a doubt in my mind that my parents had never have eyes for anyone outside their marriage. They're too self-centered to look astray. Yeah, I know her name is Bess. That wasn't a good hint. See, it's locked in. Well, maybe it's a good place to call it here. And I can work on this more, maybe on Wednesday. Okay. Well, we'll see you later, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye!